Welcome in, everyone, to the Bend, Oregon Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Rob Eggers, principal broker here at Duke Warner Realty. 20 years experience selling real estate here in Bend. And today I have a special guest with me. I have Sabrina Norton at First American Title. And Sabrina is one of the top producing escrow officers in Central Oregon. We have worked together for many years, done lots of transactions, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
So the reason I wanted to have you on, Sabrina, as you know, is we're talking about wire fraud and real estate fraud and the vulnerabilities that exist in a real estate transaction. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important for the public to be aware of what's happening out there and what they can do to protect themselves and prevent this from happening as best as possible. Mm-hmm. But before we jump into that, I just want to give people a little background on you. You've been a top producing escrow officer in Central Oregon for a long time, north of 1,000 transactions a year. And the reason I love picking your brain is because not only your experience, but you just see so much volume. Mm-hmm. So like any realtor, the volume that they do is going to be so much less than an escrow officer. Mm-hmm. So you have a much broader view of things. And with that, like for example, I've never experienced real estate fraud in my career.
Good.
Yeah. and hopefully it stays that way. Mm-hmm. But you, with doing so many transactions a year, you have.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that a little bit. But first, tell me about how you got into being an escrow officer.
Well, I started right out of college, 18 years ago this year.
Wow.
It's so crazy
That's
to
awesome.
say that.
Congratulations.
My first legit real job out of college. And I, growing up in college, I've always loved busy work. I've always loved people. I've always loved paperwork. And this job was absolutely perfect for me. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Busy work and paperwork. You were born to do this.
I was.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've been doing it 18 years, right out of college. So, yeah. Wow, that's great. Now, another thing that you do is you teach courses. And that's actually kind of how I got this idea. You taught a course at our office on wire fraud and real estate fraud. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're going to kind of dive into today. So maybe you can start just with an explanation just about what is wire fraud, just to start to, educate people a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So wire fraud, unfortunately, has been going on for years and years, but it's just gotten really bad because people are getting really creative, and it's different types of fraud. There's wire fraud as far as trying to divert buyers' funds from getting to escrow. There's wire fraud as far as hackers trying to get sellers or escrow companies to divert sending sellers their proceeds, trying to change bank accounts. There's fraudulent sellers now trying to sell people's land. I mean, there's all sorts of types.
Wow.
So
the list goes on.
It does, unfortunately. But the way that it kind of occurs and how it starts is hackers gain access to people's emails. And so if you've ever gotten that email from Netflix that says, hey, your payment's late, or you need to change your payment information, or update your password, or do something like that. Once you click on that link, a hacker has access to your email.
Wow.
And they can install malware and start just being on your computer. It's crazy how many people on a daily basis can try and access someone's computer, and it's generally by sending them an email and clicking on a link. So people just have to be really careful about the links they're clicking on.
Yeah, that one's so easy to fall for.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay.
So once they get into your system, they search for keywords: real estate, transactions, wires. They start going through your emails to see if you are somehow involved in some sort of real estate transaction. And then they try to take over that email conversation for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So one real life example that happened with me, I had a buyer who had already had our wire instructions, and we have red flags all over our emails. Like, our wire instructions never change. And what the hacker did was they hacked into either the broker's email or the buyer's email, took my picture, put it on an email, put all of my assistants on there. It looked like a legit email.
So it didn't take your picture with a photo. They stole the photo off of
it.
an email that you had sent.
Yes, they stole the photo.
Oh, wow.
So they make it look super real. And they said that due to COVID, this was a couple years ago, due to COVID, it's taking longer for wires to process.
Which makes sense.
So if you're ready to, we recommend sending your money in $10,000 increments. And if you're ready to do that, we will send you our updated wire instructions because we don't want your transaction delayed. There's always like a sense of urgency in trying to scare these people. And if it's your first time buying a home,
Oh, you don't know.
you have no clue
sure.
that that is a huge red flag.
Wow.
So he said, absolutely, send him over. And he sent $90,000 to who knows where.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
90,000. So he did 10 transactions.
I don't know exactly. What I had heard was that he did a $50,000 wire and a $40,000 wire.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's brutal. I mean, this is a buyer's down payment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're buying a $5 million home or a first-time home buyer. This is money that you've worked hard to earn over years and years of time, and it's just gone.
Yeah, it's sad. So the crazy thing is, and the reason why we've given this class probably 25 times throughout Central Oregon. The reason why we are so passionate about this is because the agent was on the email, and about 5 lenders were on the email, and none of them read it and thought that it was a red flag.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
really? Mm-hmm. So the hacker not only emailed the buyer, but multiple people, including the agents and the loan officers.
Yeah.
And no one said, "Hey, this doesn't sound right."
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
So
They really slipped it through there.
Yeah, we're just trying to get the word out and just make people aware that this is a big issue, and it's not just in big cities that this is happening. Like, it's happening all the time here locally. So.
Right. Yeah, like I know now, as part of every real estate transaction we do in our office, we have to get a wire fraud disclosure signed by the buyer and the seller.
Good.
And not only that, but I have a conversation with every person, because in a real estate transaction, so many people are used to just doing lots of paperwork, and especially if they're doing it on a DocuSign or DigiSign, they're like click, 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 and they're not necessarily reading it.
Yeah.
So that one I absolutely talk about to the buyer, especially or the seller, both sides. But like, do not ever send your money without verifying that you're sending it to the correct place by picking up the phone, making a call.
Exactly.
So that's the next thing is what can buyers do to help protect themselves and not end up like this poor guy and probably thousands of other people that this happened to across the nation.
Yeah. So it's always verbally verify wire instructions over the phone at a known phone number. You can Google First American Title in Bend. You can Google any title company. And the other thing too is it starts with you guys having that upfront conversation. This is your escrow officer. This is her cell phone number. Plug her into your phone. My cell phone is the only thing that I use for my business.
Okay.
So, you can call her, verify wire instructions, never send a wire without verbally verifying them. I have them memorized. I'm pretty sure my husband has them memorized because I have said them so many times out loud.
That's great.
So yeah, I mean that it's just super important. Don't send a wire without verbally verifying it at a known phone number. Don't call a phone number that's on the email.
Right.
Because, that's what that person did that impersonated me. All of my assistants' phone numbers were correct, but my phone number they changed so that if someone called that they could be like, yeah, I'm Sabrina, send it here. Those are the correct wire instructions.
Right, because especially if they've never spoke with you before, they don't know your voice.
Yeah.
And if it's someone who's really good, it could sound legit.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
And we've also taken an extra step. When we have an escrow transaction opened and I introduce myself, I've taken an extra step that I've just eliminated sending wire instructions to agents. You guys don't get them from me anymore because
Okay.
I want to eliminate the amount of people that are getting them.
Oh,
and
good.
so we send the hello email to the buyers to say we've opened escrow, and then in a separate secure email that they have to create a login for, they get the wire instructions from me.
So they do not get the wire instructions in the initial email. They get them once they...
Yeah, I send a separate secure email, and I state that in my initial email that you're going to get this separately only to you because I
Okay.
just don't want multiple people getting
Nice.
wire instructions.
Yeah, that's a good change because we used to get the wire instructions too.
Yep.
So interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super scary stuff. I mean, so many different forms of fraud out there. I had a listing one time where, and buyers could be aware of this too, where it was here on the west side, nice house. It was vacant, and it was a trust situation. So the seller had passed away, and I kept getting these phone calls like, "Hey, I'm interested in this house for rent." And I was like, "Oh, well, nope, that house is for sale."
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "Oh, okay, never mind." Hung up. Like 4 hours later, I got the same phone call from somebody else. "Hey, I'm interested in this house for rent." I'm like, "House for rent? This house is for sale." And I'm like, "Where are you seeing this?" Like, "Oh, there's an ad on Craigslist." So I go on Craigslist. There's my listing. All the photos that I had a professional photographer take are on Craigslist. They just copied them and pasted them, put on Craigslist. And then there's this whole blurb about like, "Hey, we're out of the area right now, but we're going to do first come, first serve on this. And if you just send us your deposit, you are in on getting this this rental." And people were like about to do it. And of course, I flagged it and took it down. But it actually kept popping up a couple different times. And I don't know where these people are at that are doing this.
Right.
But it was happening, and it kept happening over and over. And all I could do was keep going on there and flagging it.
Yeah.
So there's just so many different crazy things out there these days.
Another one that's kind of big on the escrow side of things is people trying to get the escrow company to change where the seller's proceeds are going.
Oh.
So we've gotten emails before that says like, "Hey," and again, the hackers will get into the seller's emails, see that they're doing a real estate transaction, communicating with the title company, and try to take over the conversation.
Wow.
And say, "I would like my proceeds sent to this bank." And
So that's where you guys have to be
where
aware.
we have to be. You have to work with a diligent title company that knows it's not okay to get that and to not call at a known phone number
Right.
the seller and say, "Hey, I just got these updated wire instructions and I wanted to make sure that it came from you." So we had that one time, and my assistant called, and sure enough, it wasn't them.
I mean, that makes sense because it could go both ways. It's that then they're just impersonating the seller at that point to you. And that's actually happened where escrow companies have, okay.
Yeah.
So very similar situation happened to a family member of mine who sold a car. And it was a really nice car. They sold it from Midwest out to California. And they used an escrow company I think it was called Escrow.com. And what happened was the buyer put all of his money for the car at Escrow.com and told Escrow.com, "Do not release the money to the seller until I see the car, until I get it." So the car was shipped out to California. He received the car. And once he got it, he's like, "Hey, it looks great. Go ahead and release the money." So Escrow released the money to my family member, but my family member got hacked. And Escrow took the bait on that, and they sent the money to who knows where. And it was like days went by. It's like my family member's like, "Hey, I don't see this money in our account." And like, "Nope, it was sent. We have verification." It's like, "Well, give it a few more days." Kept like doing this whole thing. Sure enough, it never showed up.
Yeah.
And it went to who knows where, and it was a battle for years to get any of that money back.
Yeah. My stomach drops every time I hear situations like that and stories like that. Or even when a buyer calls and says like, "Hey, I sent my earnest money in. Is it's weird that you guys don't have it yet, right? And, it just depends on timing and everything in their bank and how long it takes to send money. But I mean, even if it's fine, even if the situation's fine and they just send it after their wire cutoff time or whatever, my initial thought is like, did you call me and verify these wire instructions? No, like, okay, well, I hope this shows up. Like, it's so sad that you just have to be like scared all the time.
I know.
For people's money.
You literally do. You have to be kind of paranoid.
Yeah.
Like peering around every corner.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about like not $5,000 here.
Yeah.
We're talking about tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands. I mean, if you're doing an all cash transaction, it's huge.
Yeah, it is huge.
It can ruin
people's
people's financial lives, really.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So where do we go from here? Like, what other things is pertinent for people to be aware of?
I think it's important to take a step back and realize you don't need to have the same password for every single one of your accounts.
Good point.
That's a big thing. I mean, I'm a culprit of having a password that's the same for all of my accounts. We've got lists of the 30 most common passwords. Password is probably the number one password that people use.
No.
No. Yeah. So what hackers do is they can get into your computer and they start trying to gain access to your accounts, and they've got systems that can run through these top 10,000 passwords and hope that one of the passwords hits, and then they can get into your account. So make them unique. Another thing that they use to try to gain access is, on Facebook and social media, those questionnaires like name your favorite sports team or your pet's name or all those things.
They're using that?
Those are ways that people are trying to get answers to your security questions or to try and guess what your password is.
That's crazy.
People should not do those. And if they have in the past, especially on Facebook, they stay on your timeline or on your Facebook page. Go delete them.
Okay.
That's a huge thing that people are using to do like security question answers and stuff.
Wow, that is really crazy.
People
I
are
would have
very
never known. That's a really interesting one for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, before we talk about our last few topics, I'm going to talk about the sponsor of our show. So this podcast is sponsored by Duke Warner Realty. Duke Warner Realty is a premier real estate firm here in Bend that was established in 1967 by Duke and Kitty Warner and is still family owned and operated to this very day. Duke Warner Realty has served thousands and thousands of customers throughout Central Oregon over the last 55 years, and the brokerage not only features Bend's best real estate agents, but also the most experienced, with the average agent at Duke Warner having 15 years of real estate experience. If you want your next real estate transaction done right with honesty and integrity, give Duke Warner Realty a call today at 541-382-8262 or visit them online at dukewarner.com. Okay, Sabrina, so we've covered a lot of really cool, crazy, scary topics so far, but we have a few more left.
But wait, there's more.
The next one is unsecured Wi-Fi and what people need to be aware about that. So why don't you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because that's another way that hackers can gain access to your computer. So, everybody has their favorite coffee shop they go to, or if you're at a hotel, make sure you go up and verbally ask the people that work there what their Wi-Fi is, what the Wi-Fi is. And then if it's not a Wi-Fi that you have to get into with a password, don't use it. Unsecured Wi-Fi is not good to use. The reason why is anybody can create a Wi-Fi name. So somebody could be sitting in a Chase Bank parking lot, and create a Wi-Fi that says Chase Bank guest, and you just go onto it, and they can have access to your computer.
And it's just open, no password required.
So wow. There was a Dateline special that someone did where it was at a resort, and someone just created a, resort name guest, and so many people just got on there. And then they went and talked to these people and were like, hey, did you know that you did this and that people gain access to your computer by doing these things? So the best thing for you to do is actually just use the personal hotspot. on your phone.
Okay.
If you've got that, use it. It's the best thing to do. Next best thing is to walk up to the people and say, what's your Wi-Fi and what's the password? And again, if it's unsecured, I wouldn't use it.
So is it okay if you're at a coffee shop and it's Starbucks and it says Starbucks Wi-Fi? Is it okay to use that if you have to use a password?
If it's password protected.
Okay.
And you have to get the password
You have to
from
get the
someone
password
that
from
works
them.
that.
Yeah, or it's posted on the wall behind the desk or something like that. Okay, then that's okay.
Yeah, those are secured. It's the unsecured ones that aren't great to use.
That's the difference. Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
That's a pro tip right there. Okay, so let's talk about fraudulent sellers.
So this is the newest of new fraud. There's one that's maybe a little bit newer that I'll talk about at the end.
Okay.
But this started vamping up in November, I would say, of last year. And it's fraudulent sellers. And this is where people will, it's usually with vacant land. People will go online, spot a piece of vacant land. It happens a ton in Deschutes County because we've got so much vacant land, especially around Sun River, Lapine area.
Wow.
That was where it kind of all started. So people will go online, spot a piece of vacant land, and then they will do some research on it and then call a real estate agent and say, hey, I'm Joe Smith and I own this piece of land and I want to list it for sale. It's usually way below market value, and they say that they want to sell it quickly. They just want to get it off their hands. And then, of course, if you're a real estate agent, especially kind of right now, it's like, yes, a listing. I'm so excited. Let's do it. We'll get your paperwork signed.
Wow.
And so the idea that these fake people are trying to get into contract and go all the way to the end, close the escrow transaction, and take the proceeds. And so the way that they get stopped, and I don't for sure 100% know if anybody's been successful in Deschutes County. They have in other areas.
Okay.
The way that they get stopped, especially on our side, is we don't let people use their own notaries. So usually the sellers are saying that they're out of state or they're traveling. They won't be back in town. They need to use their own notary, and then they're in cahoots with that notary.
Oh, wow.
And we'll give them a portion of the proceeds if the transaction ends up closing.
So they actually use a notary, but it's just a notary that they're...
fake one.
Oh, wow.
Okay. That they're in cahoots with. Or I shouldn't say a fake one, but a not legit notary. And the way that this actually came about is we actually had a transaction in escrow. One of my coworkers did. And she got a call from the agent who had gotten a call from the owner of a piece of property. He was here for Thanksgiving, and he drove by his lot and saw a for sale sign.
Oh, no.
On the lot, and was immediately called the listing agent and was like, my piece of property is not for sale. And
that's a call as a real estate agent you just don't want to get.
You don't want to get.
Oh, man.
And that's how they found out. And that's kind of why we revamped this whole fraud class. We added a whole section for fraudulent sellers because we got calls every single day about, because we have a program that we can run phone numbers and emails through. And we can call these sellers and see if they're actually listing their property or not, or if it's a legit person.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So
So the hard part about that is you live in Colorado and you've got a piece of investment land in Bend, and you're just like golfing and skiing. You're not really paying attention to that vacant land. There's nothing to really, it's low maintenance.
Yeah.
It just sits there. So how do you know that this is happening to you?
Yeah. So I guess the answer is you don't.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Unless
there's nothing really they can do to prevent it. It's more from the real estate agent has to be aware of that, and then the escrow people have to be aware of it.
Prevention on our end and your guys' end of doing some due diligence and seeing if it's a legit person. I have real estate agents asking for two pieces of ID because it's very easy to get a fake driver's license.
So a driver's license and something else?
Yeah, passport, something else that has their picture and name on it.
Yep.
A lot of agents will ask questions about the property. Unfortunately, and fortunately, Deschutes County has a lot of maps and you can look at aerials. But if those people haven't gone into those details yet on the property, you can say, does it sit next to a river? Is it heavily wooded?
Describe the property or
describe the
something.
property to me.
Yeah.
So I know people have caught sellers that way, being like, I don't know.
Yeah, they don't know the answer.
Usually if you own the property, you know those answers to those questions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I always end this class by saying, I don't trust anybody anymore. It's really sad, but I mean, it's true.
Well, when you see this stuff, it's like, that's why, some policemen are paranoid with their family because they see the crime all the time. Like the general public doesn't, but the cops do, right?
Yeah.
Same with you. That's like I said at the beginning, you've got all this volume that you do. So you see this stuff a lot more than an individual agent. So it's great to have people like you that can educate us and the public on really what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people want to know, I mean, deeds are public record. So anybody can go online and see if a deed is recorded. So if you want to check your own property, you can easily do that. Or you can call your local title company and ask if they can pull the last recorded deed just to have the reassurance that your property is still in your name.
Wow. Yeah.
Just had someone do it yesterday and I
Okay.
called them back today and was like, good news, you still own your property.
Oh, man.
I know.
That would be the worst news ever if
I
it's
know.
just, it sold a year ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I know.
Well, that's a good thing for, sellers to be aware of, just, to check in more often with title companies in the area. I don't know if there's anything that they could necessarily put on the property.
No, nothing. I mean, that's up to them, I guess. I know that people will start after this class seeing all the Title Lock commercials. So there is a company, it's called Title Lock. It's kind of like credit monitoring. They will watch your property, and if a deed records, they'll notify you. It's no type of insurance. They don't help you get it back. They don't do anything.
Isn't it too late at that point?
It is too late at that point. It's just a heads up to you.
Oh,
that
great.
Your deed has...
By the way, here's some bad news. Your property just sold.
Yeah.
And you didn't get any of the proceeds.
Yeah. But that is a way to monitor it if you don't want to look.
If it's a done deal at that point, I think I'd just choose ignorance and just rather just believe I'd still own the property and not deal with that. That is really sad. I mean, gosh, the things that these people are coming up with, the amount of effort that these people put into this stuff, just think how productive they could be if they put that in a positive direction or like towards a real job.
Yeah, go get a job.
Yeah. So much
steal
easier.
people's money.
And the cool thing about having a real job is you don't go to jail.
Right?
I mean, this is just crazy, this stuff.
I know.
Some people's minds. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more we've got is fraudulent buyers.
Yeah, so this has popped up in the last few months. Both myself and one of my coworkers received fraudulent cashier's checks. And they're usually, again, they're people that are out of the country and they have these cashier's checks shipped to us.
Okay.
They're usually for really large amounts. The one that I had on my coworker's desk, it was a $115,000 earnest money check. And I think the property itself was like a $300,000 transaction.
That's a lot of earnest money.
A lot of earnest money, which is kind of a red flag. But the idea there is for an escrow company to deposit that check. The buyer cancels the transaction. The escrow company doesn't think about the 10-day waiting period that they need. And that the escrow company then refunds that money to the buyer, and then the check comes back as a non-valid check or an NSF check. And then the title company is out that money.
Oh, really?
So that's buyers trying to steal money from title companies.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
is
that happening successfully?
Well, I had one, and Jenny, one of my coworkers, had one probably within like a month of each other. We are very diligent. That cashier's check, we scrutinized. It was from a bank that doesn't issue we called the bank and they don't issue cashier's checks. It said cashier check instead of cashier's check. It was from...
Oh, it didn't have an S on it? So that was a red flag? Interesting.
And the first red flag is the name on the cashier's check wasn't Jenny's buyer's name. So
yeah.
You just have to watch for these things.
Yeah, if you're just paying attention and being diligent and cognizant that all these things happen.
Yeah.
You just have to, you can hopefully prevent it just by taking some precautionary measures.
That's our goal. That's why we are trying to get the word out.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel like the fraudulent seller thing has kind of died down a little bit. And I just want to attribute it to all of the classes that we've been doing.
Well, there's a lot of power in education.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like a lot of these Craigslist scams, I gotta believe that very few people, that the percentage of people falling for them now is a lot less than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, because people are aware of it.
Exactly, because of education and just being aware and being diligent and vigilant of the situation. So, no, it's great to have all this information and just for the classes that you teach and everything, super valuable. So,
thank you.
Yeah, kind of scary stuff, actually.
Yep.
But you know what? It's the world that we live in.
It is. And people are just going to keep getting more and more creative and trying to find ways to steal people's money. So you just got to be aware.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think some big takeaways there are if you're in a real estate transaction, don't do anything without verifying with a real person that you know. And even just going to the business is probably the safest.
You totally can.
Yeah,
and
walk
like
right
I
in.
said, you can Google First American Title, get our front desk. They verify and wire instructions all the time over the phone.
Yeah.
So everybody at our company pretty much knows our wire instructions.
Yep, for sure. Well, and I think it's a good lesson too, just to have someone like Sabrina on your side if you're doing a real estate transaction. Use the best. That she's available. If you've got a real estate transaction, she will close your transaction. And I've done dozens and dozens and dozens with her. I don't even know how many over the years. But thank you for all of your service to me and my clients. I really appreciate it. And thank you for this awesome information. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you are on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on a podcast app, go ahead and follow the show and give us a rating on there as well. We'd really appreciate it. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Take care.